What's going on, guys? So I want to talk about the importance of building the mind-body connection, whether it's in any task in jiu-jitsu or anything you're trying to learn to do. I think there's got to be some connection between the mind and the body, and I think the way that we establish that connection is through deliberate practice. I'm reading the book Grit by Angela Duckworth. They talk about deliberate practice. You've heard this before, I think, in different books, and they actually mention in this book as well that to become an expert in something, you have to put either 10 years or 10,000 hours into the specific activity. Now, that's not always true because it depends on how you practice, right? If you just go to jiu-jitsu and you're just messing around, you're not really doing anything deliberate, you're not practicing in deliberate fashion towards a goal, then your progress is probably going to be staggered or slowed. So let me give you guys a few ideas on what deliberate practice is and kind of how deliberate practice can connect to the flow state or being in a state of flow. In the book, they talk about deliberate practice being the key to improvement. So you basically are intentionally working on a task. Maybe your goal is to win a jiu-jitsu competition, right? Or win a jiu-jitsu match. But you're going to break that down. That goal is going to break down into different elements, and those are going to be called stretch goals. So a stretch goal would be like a small aspect of the accomplishment or the task at hand, which would be like, hey, I want to get better at my butterfly guard sweeps, right? So I want to get better at sweeping so I can set up my submissions right after the sweep. So stretch goals are very vital because they give you kind of things to focus on and practice specifically towards that big, large goal that you have. So then you work on the stretch goal towards your master goal or your main goal, which is winning, the jiu-jitsu match, right? So your stretch goal would be, all right, am I being able to set up the butterfly guard? Am I able to get the sweep? Am I sweeping my opponents? Is that successful? Now, when you're doing that, you kind of assess that. Once you've achieved that small goal, then you're going to add another goal like we just mentioned. You're going to add maybe, all right, I'm going to transition from mount into a submission to the finish, that type of thing. So that's how you're going to build goal after goal. The key things here is that deliberate practice is very difficult. It's very energy consuming mentally and physically. You have to really pay close attention to what you're doing, working through the motions, and you can't just kind of have your mind going elsewhere. You have to be really focused on a task in hand. A lot of times, deliberate practice is exhausting. You maybe only be able to tolerate an hour or even less of deliberate practice at a time, and according to the book, no more than like 3 to 4 hours a day of deliberate practice. So it's like really, whether it's studying or other aspects, actually drilling, it's pretty tough to stay really sharp and consistent. So those are things that are going to take a lot of diligent time and effort, and you have to kind of really be focused on what you're doing. So the goal is to reach to a flow state, which is basically a state of like concentration, but you almost reach a point of like spontaneity in your movement, right? You can kind of, when you're flowing, you don't really anymore really deliberately thinking about stuff. You're just moving, reacting, and adjusting to the task at hand. So I think reaching that flow is kind of shows that you've connected those two dots of the mental and the physical, because your body starts to kind of go almost like on its own, like an autopilot, and it does the movement. I think a lot of us that have trained jiu-jitsu have that feeling like we're not constantly thinking about technique when we're rolling, unless we're working on something newer that we're trying to build into our game. We're just kind of like moving in and reacting, responding, and our body just moves naturally, into the movements, into the grooves, into the positions that we need. And I think that's a state of flow that a lot of us have established after training for so many years. So deliberate practice is carefully planned, and flow is kind of spontaneous, kind of spur of the moment. So deliberate practice requires you to really go above your current skill set, like you're working on techniques that you're not quite good at yet or you're trying to improve upon, so above your skill set. And flow will be described as an experience when the challenge and the skill are kind of in balance. Ultimately, deliberate practice is for preparation, and flow is for performance. And I think when you get those two to conjoin and work together, deliberate practice feeds into flow. And I think that's where you kind of build that, really thought into training, the really deliberate, specific training, the skill set, deliberate practice, and then turns into a flow, because when you're in the match or when you're at a tournament, you're kind of in a flow state already. You're kind of going towards performance. So I think focusing on, deliberate practice is going to lead to a flow state. It's going to build that mind-body connection, and it's going to allow you to kind of perform better on the mats or in whatever you're trying to achieve and accomplish. Those are my 2 cents on that. And, the book is Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's one of my favorite books. So guys, that's it. Hope you guys liked the video. Talk to you all next time.